in the comments. This is a live interview, and so we really appreciate it. And if you like this podcast, be sure to share it with someone who might, relate to it. And if you have any questions, just ask Sarah. I'm sure she won't object to answering any questions. So without further ado, Sarah, we're going to kick it off to you. Tell us a little bit about your origin story. Okay. Where you're coming from, how'd you grew up?
Sure. Well, I was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1977. I'm getting old. I'm an only child. I was born into the Catholic faith, baptized as an infant, attended Catholic school pretty much up until high school. I was born to my mom and my dad, who were divorced when I was 3. Okay. So I had a split home pretty early on.
Did that
really loving? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How did that affect you growing up?
I would say that it pretty much defined me. Being from a split home, I often tried to figure out where I belonged. I, longed for and craved, family. I didn't have siblings. I had cousins that were really close, but it was lonely. Really? I was lonely a lot, and that's part of my whole story. I think
you were lonely with, you had were your parents? How were you lonely? I describe that loneliness.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, but I guess when you're from a divorced family, even though your parents tell you it's not your fault and it's not about you, when you're young, you still, I guess, try to figure out what went wrong, what happened, how can you not really fix it, but what can you do to make things better? I guess it made me like a peacemaker, always trying to balance everyone around me, because a lot of times it's turmoil. You're in turmoil, you've got, my mom was a single mom working really hard, going to college, stressed out, trying to make ends meet. And then you've got, my dad, who was remarried, and, he had kids, and I guess just trying to fit into each environment that you're in. And sometimes that can be a lonely place, because you're kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard
you're always trying to work to have a relationship with someone.
Yeah. And figure out what it is they want from you. I guess I was always worried about everyone else's feelings and trying to make them comfortable. And I tried to hide my own feelings because there was a lot of turmoil around me, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, for sure. So growing up, how did you grow up in a split home? What was that like?
Well, I would go, to my dad's household every other weekend, and, be with him and his, his wife and his, her daughters. Gotcha. And I'd have more of a family atmosphere there. And then when I was with my mom, it was more just my mom and I, we're very close, best friends. Yeah. My grandparents were a huge, huge part of my upbringing, because, as I said, my mom was working and going to school. So they stepped in a lot, and they were like parents to me almost. Yeah. So I kind of had these 3 different, I don't want to say roles that I played. I wasn't fake, if you know what I mean. I just had different environments that I was in, and I guess I was different in each one, my role. I don't know.
And how did that shape who you are?
I think it was really hard, because I was looking to other people for acceptance. And so I think I would try to be the person that they wanted me to be, or a person that they would love, because I was not lacking in love. I had a lot of people that loved me. I think it was just confusing in the different environments that I was in.
Gotcha. All right. So how does your story progress from there?
Well, as I mentioned, my grandparents were a huge part of my life. I was very close with them. A lot of things in my life had kind of, I guess, groomed me to later on care for them and help them both pass on to, heaven. So lots of things happened in my life. God showed up and directed me and groomed me in different positions that I held and things like that to end up caring for them. So that was big. My mom and I, being best friends, and her, going to school and being independent and working hard. I learned a lot, from that situation. And then my dad, him being remarried and having, 2 stepdaughters, I am now myself a stepmom in a blended family.
Right.
And so a lot of things that maybe I didn't understand when I was younger, just about situations or relationships, or maybe the reason things are the way they are, being now in that position myself, things have kind of come full circle with that aspect of my life.
So when you were younger, what didn't you understand? Like, give me an example of something that you might have understood then, and like the Sarah of now is different. Right?
Yeah, I guess, when you're an only child with one parent, you have this like really close, unique type of relationship that lots of kids don't really experience, because you've got siblings and, you're playing with them or competing for attention or however that works. So then maybe when I would go with my dad's family and they had like the family environment where, you're sharing your time and you're amongst, siblings, and not having maybe the same type of relationship with that parent. So not knowing like what's, I guess, normal or what's correct. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of confusing, but.
Well, I get like the whole, the attention thing. Did that play a role into your like young adult life or growing up? Like, how does that work?
I think I was always striving for people to like me. I wanted to fit in, and that's that whole fitting in thing. You know what I mean? Because going from different households and even included in that is my grandparents, because when I was with them, it was a mother and a father figure, and I was like, I was like their golden child, when I was with them. You know how grandparents are. They like spoil you.
Right.
So going from that to like with my mom, we were more like best friends, and she leaned on me for support, even as a young child, as much as I leaned on her for support. So I guess just trying to morph into whoever was around me, like trying to morph into what they needed from me. A lot of that goes into my my Catholic faith growing up. When I, grew up Catholic, I had a very close relationship, with God and with Catholicism, and I clung to that in a lot of times of my confusion or my sorrow. I tried to be as Christ-like as possible. So with Christ, loving those around him and being there for people and being kind, that was kind of like what I tried to do. I tried to emulate that with people in my life. So I think I had a big problem with identity growing up, because go ahead.
How so? What does that mean?
I think because of the different scenarios that I was, trying to fit in at, whether it be the different households or school or whatever, and being an only child, there's kind of like a little bit of a loneliness to that, I guess you could say, because you don't really have, your siblings around to share perspectives with and things like that in your exact scenario. I think that I tried to, again, fit in with those around me, but never really knew maybe my innermost desires. I was talking to Pastor Scott the other day about this. And when I was young, you have friends, they have hobbies, like maybe, you collected seashells, you were really into that, or you were into like He-Man, and you had like all the little characters or whatever. My cousin was into that when he was little. I struggled with finding things of my own that I was really passionate about, I guess. Like I would say, oh, gee, I wish I had like a little hobby that I loved or whatever. But I don't know. Nothing ever really did. So my hobby was people. That's what I would tell people. My hobby is people, and I want to learn as much as I can about them and get to know them, and just see the world through their eyes. It's fascinating.
I know I've done enough of these to tell that if a kid grows up wanting attention and feeling worthless, it could get them in trouble in their adult years.
Mhm.
Has that ever played a role? Has that ever gotten you in trouble?
Oh yeah, I made plenty of poor decisions, growing up and being in high school, and again having that identity crisis. I think the identity crisis carried on with me throughout high school. I had different types of friends, different groups of friends that I could be with. I was an A student. I was in dancing. I was in modeling, and I had all the, I don't know, it sounds corny, like preppy friends or this or that. But then I had like the partier friends. I
Sure.
had my boyfriend was kind of a troublemaker in high school, and he had, I guess riff-raff friends or whatever. And so I would hang out with them and, make decisions to do things they were doing and things like that. So I kind of just always would go back and forth with the kind of people that I was around and, do that kind of
You're kind
thing.
of a chameleon, like you just kind of
Yeah.
fit in.
I actually
Gotcha.
wrote a poem called The Chameleon in high school, and it's
Really?
very fitting to who I am. And yeah.
Wow. So what kind of things did you get in trouble with? Let's get. I mean, like, what's some of the good stuff here?
Well, I never got in trouble. I didn't get
Oh,
caught. Um, I just
gotcha.
made probably poor decisions that a lot of
Okay,
teenagers make.
I get
But
it.
I,
No
got them
problem.
made.
No
I was
problem.
smart.
So, so you said you were a part of a blended family.
Mhm.
How were how were the previous marriages, if I could ask that? Like, did that shape this marriage, or where did the family
Yeah.
come from? Like, tell me a little bit about your new
Well, I will
navigating.
tell you, kind of going backwards with that whole confusion with my identity in the different households that I had. I always felt never like 100% connected or comfortable in any of those roles. So I always wanted a family of my own. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted to
Mhm.
have children and have a husband and just have my own family where I knew everybody would love me fully and I would love them fully and that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
A lot of girls dream about that anyway.
sure.
So I think instead of fulfilling my purpose and realizing that I'm a daughter of the King and God loves me, and there's a whole lot with the whole Catholic religion that I didn't realize certain things until I switched over and became part of the Christianity and Sunlight Community Church and things like that. But I'm losing my train of thought here. Where was I?
With the
Oh,
families.
the marriages. So,
Marriages.
anyways, instead of like pursuing my God-given purpose and doing things the right way, making myself happy first, fulfilling my goals and my achievements, I clung to that desperation, that need to try to, have a family. So I got married very young, the first time,
How young?
and hmm,
How young?
I was 20.
20. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I was 20.
Okay.
We dated for about 2 years, 18 to 20, and I was married, and neither one of us were ready. It probably wasn't a good decision.
Mhm.
And I did that. It was almost like I was trying to create my own reality or trying to push something because I wanted it so badly instead of
Interesting.
instead of pursuing my God-given purpose and fulfilling my goals. That just, it did not work out. I was still in Ohio at the time, and I loved him. He was a great guy, but
Mhm.
he had some issues and we were just too young. And so that um only lasted a year. I mean, we were together for like 3 years, but the marriage itself only lasted a year. After that I moved to Florida.
Any
I
particular reason why? Like, how did that end, or is that
Um, he was struggling with some things in his life. And he wasn't ready to be in a relationship. It was a toxic relationship,
okay?
As I
Okay.
said, he was a great guy, but we were just young.
Okay.
And so that just didn't work out.
So that ended,
So
and then
yeah, that ended. And as I said before, I was an only child and my mom and I were best friends. A few years prior to me getting married, my mom moved to Florida from Ohio. And I was
okay.
like, I'm not moving to Florida. These are my friends and this is my home. And, not having siblings, my friends were my family,
Yeah.
So when that happened, I was just devastated. I didn't know what to do. I wanted my mom, so I sold my house and I moved to Florida. So I was 20 years old and I moved to Florida, and that was an eye-opener.
Freshly divorced.
Freshly divorced.
Yeah. And so new life type of stuff.
New life, yeah. Florida was different. I mean, I was in Toledo my whole life, a small town girl, you know, playing cards and hanging out. That's what we did. So Florida was a whole new scene, you know, multicultural. I loved that. Exciting. I kind of, though, because I wanted connections again, and I was still, because now I just left my whole social network, all my friends behind, and trying to start over. So I think I soon became in another rush to try to have that family. And, you know, after a few years in Florida, the same thing happened to me again. I met someone and I kind of rushed into a decision to get married. I'm on my third one here, Aaron. Third time's the charm now, which we'll get to that in a minute.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, my next one, we, got married, got pregnant right away, decided to move to North Carolina. I unfortunately, I lost the baby. So that, that happens. That was devastating. But we got through it.
What is that like? To walk me through those feelings.
Sure. The excitement, especially for me, as I told you, always wanting that family. I was going to do it this time. It didn't work out the first time. So now I'm going to make this happen. And then to get married and follow those steps. But then to have that happen, it's almost, even though it's not your fault, you kind of feel like a failure. Like you feel like, oh, something's broken, or, this is even a silly thought, and this goes back to some of the Catholicism, but like God's punishing me, for making some of the choices I made in the past, and I'm never going to be able to have a family, and those kind of feelings, really rough.
Yeah.
But, you heal and you talk to other women who have gone through it, and they're your support. And I did that. Actually, when I moved to North Carolina, I got a job at an OBGYN office. I worked in the front office for 2 years. So I was surrounded by the profession and, doctors and nurses and friends of mine who all told me how common it was. And that helped heal me a lot. God places you in different situations to help you through things, I think. I ended up getting pregnant again, same marriage. And I have my son, Riley, who's awesome. Riley. And that was great. But then a few months, he was about 7 months, and the marriage was not working out. There was some choices that were made, he wasn't really ready to get married, I don't think, and I wasn't. There was some unfaithfulness and different things that, went on. And I just decided at that point, as much as I did not want my child to have to go through the same scenario that I went through, I just felt like I couldn't stay in something that wasn't going to be, true and that kind of thing. Yeah. So unfortunately, we got a divorce. That was divorce number 2. Yeah. But I will tell you something. So I went to North Carolina at this point. As I said, I was working at a doctor's office. My son's dad traveled a lot for work. So when I had the baby, I wanted to find a daycare for him because I had to still work. And there was this little non-denominational Christian church down the street. I did go visit some different churches. I tried a Catholic church, but I kind of had been done with Catholicism for just a couple of different things. Nothing wrong with it. I wasn't fulfilled. There were some things going on. So I didn't find a church I liked until I found this little church down the street from my house. I signed Riley up, and they had this thing called VBS going on. And I was like, what's VBS?
Sure.
They're like, oh, it's great, this vacation Bible school, and I said, oh, I love kids and I have a free time on my hands, so I'll volunteer. And so I volunteered and I worked with the 3-year-olds, which was way more difficult than I ever thought it would be. I had like all this structured activities planned for my VBS craft, and the kids are just like all over the place. And
Sure.
I've never had any experience working with, preschoolers or VBS. Anyway, long story short, that happened. I had talked to that pastor about some of the issues going on, and he agreed with me that it probably just wasn't the best marriage to stay in at the time. So we did decide to split up. We're still friends. We get along great, which is wonderful. Right. But then I again left North Carolina and came back to Florida where my mom was again.
Gotcha.
Came back down to be near family, had my son, was amazing. It was at the point when I had my son where I realized that I was worth something.
Really?
As I said, the loneliness and the worthlessness, it's not to say that anybody didn't pour their love into me or anything like that. This is a personal thing that I struggled with in my life. And so when I had my son and I looked at him and I said, you know what? I am somebody important. I need to be the best Sarah that I can be for my son, to be this example to my son. And God's entrusting me with this very precious job, the most precious job I'll ever have, the most important job. And that kind of changed everything for me.
Wow. What did that change from what to what?
Well, I mean, there's not time to talk about everything that we need to talk about.
Give me the
basically, I had always gone from job to job. I've had lots of different jobs. I worked in banking, I worked in insurance, I worked in the medical field. And I always excelled at my jobs, but I never quite felt fully fulfilled or that I was making an impact, here while I'm here on this earth. So once I had him, I realized how important purpose was and wanting to make a positive impact and things. So that's when I started really praying about what God had planned for me. And so I wanted to do something meaningful to show him that's important, to do something that you really care about. So I applied for some different jobs, and I saw this ad when I was still in North Carolina for this little place called Sunlight Christian Academy. And I was like, oh, sunlight, I always loved like the sun and the moon and the stars and all that. So it just kind of spoke to me, sunlight, how nice.
Oh, look at that. Like their name.
Yeah. So I sent an email and ended up talking to a girl named Carissa, who we all know, Carissa Palm, was here at the time. And there was tons of applicants at that time, but Carissa thought I had a cool email address. My email address is greeneyegirl24. And so she like that, I kind of stood out amongst all the applicants, and I called and we chatted and everything worked out. Like I wasn't ready to move here, but she wasn't ready to go back to school because it was like her position that I was taking over in the office. Okay. I went for some other interviews, even an interview at an old job I thought for sure I would get. I didn't. God closed every door for me except for this one. And I thought, well, I'm a mom, my son, he's little. This is a good place for me to be temporarily. So I ended up taking the job.
What was the job?
It was the office assistant here at the school. Okay. Yeah. It was small. I mean, there was like 20 kids here then.
Very bottom. Very bottom. Gotcha.
It was small.
You talk a lot about purpose and God-given purpose. How did you find your purpose there?
I don't know. When I came here, it was, there's so many things that happen, signs, and God showed up in so many ways. But when I came here, I just felt like I could use all of my gifts and talents all rolled into one, because I had lots of different backgrounds, like I said, in customer service and business and banking. And this was like a little business, that we were running. And as far as my people skills, my interest in people, I feel like I got to meet all the different young parents in the community and all the people in the church. And it was just such a family. It was the family that I had always been looking for, as I mentioned to you, not really having that wholeness as I was younger. Everybody loved and accepted me, and Pastor Scott just had so much faith in me and my abilities. And, I remember doing a little class on spiritual gifts with Jack Vanderslick. He had the spiritual gifts workbooks, and we would meet and everything. And come to find out, my gifts, were leadership. And so that just kind of helped groom me a little bit. I don't know. Everybody embraced me. It was like nothing I had ever felt before when I came here.
Did you feel?
I remember.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I remember coming to the church service for the first time, because being raised Catholic, it's kind of, it's just different. It's more, you're reciting things, and it's more quiet and calm and a little bit more internal of a celebration of your faith. But when I came in here, people were singing and dancing. There was drums and guitar, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on here?
Well,
yeah, it was different.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like you started as an assistant, now you're leading the whole thing? Did you ever feel like you're over your head? Did you ever feel like inadequate? Like, that seems like a big jump to me.
Yeah. Well, you don't know a lot about my work history. I will tell you that there's a difference between me personally, and my feelings about myself, in that way, and my work. I mean, I've always excelled in my job. I've always gotten promotions and been, customer service leader and all this other stuff. So it's kind of, I was used to excelling in my work. I kind of pour everything.
You felt ready to
yeah, I did feel ready. So as far as like a work ethic level and the different opportunities God's, put me involved with, I feel like he's prepared me for this. But then there's that personal piece of, still struggling with some of those feelings of, worthlessness and inadequacies or loneliness, and I mean, a lot of that's just girls, women, they have insecurities about themselves.
Yeah.
So girls, so there's that piece, which is a different aspect or, perspective. I still to this day, Aaron, look up probably once or twice a week and go, really, God, like you chose me to do all of this? Like, it's hard to believe. But I feel like at the same time, I'm humble. I'm never going to say, oh, look what I did. This school is so big now and all these people, and gosh, I'm so great. I look and go, God, thank you for putting the people that you've put into my life, the women that work here, the parents that have supported us. Like every little piece fits together, and it's all his handiwork and his design. So I am unworthy, but I'm unworthy as a Christian anyway. We're all broken. So
let me, I've got 3 questions for you. And as we're wrapping up on time here, the first question is, how does your faith intersect with what you're doing at the school? Like, how does your faith guide you in what you're doing right now with the school?
It all has to be faith. I can't get through even an hour of work without faith, because the rapid rate the school has grown, it is a lot. It's a huge responsibility. And I tend to be a worrier. I have anxiety. And if I didn't believe that God's hand was in this whole thing, I would never get through it. I rely on him for everything.
Yeah. Gotcha. How does, second question is, how did, looking back on your life, and there are places in your life where God has like shown up and stuff like that, right? What do you think God is trying to teach you with like how he's worked in your whole life?
I feel like God has definitely taught me not to try and, I guess not to try and create your own reality. You hear that a lot. Oh, create your own reality, all this stuff. Not to try and force things, but to just be patient and to listen for his call and to watch for his signs. When you try to take matters into your own hands and you make decisions in haste, it never works out. So I think that was a lesson that he was trying to teach me, and also that, I am worthy. He had this big, special, amazing plan for me to come here and to do all this stuff. And it's like, wow, you must really love me, God. And I should have never thought otherwise. I should have always known that. And I think that's important. I think that's why programs like GEMS for young girls are so, so important, because they need to learn at a young age that they're valuable and that they're loved by Christ, and, finding their worth in him and nothing else, not other things.
Yeah, for sure. One last question. Where are we headed? We're going to the future. Where are you headed as a person? I'm not so much interested in the school as you are as a person, like with God, with your faith.
Mm-hmm. I've recently started something new. I've been praying out loud in my car on the way to work. I turn off my radio and I have time with God and I talk with him, and it's already been amazing. So that's definitely important. I think right now for me, trying to find that quiet time to just spend and reflect and devote to him, doing devotionals and reading the Bible. That's been a big struggle for me because my work is so overwhelming. And then I'm a mother, and I've also been a caretaker to my grandparents, and there's lots of different facets of my life. So finding that time to just spend with him is very important, and just growing in my faith, growing in my knowledge, being a better, someone, growing in my faith, and then teaching my child, from what I'm learning as well. My children, I do have 2 stepchildren as well.
Yeah.
So that's all important to me.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, is there anything you left out? Anything you want to leave us with that about your testimony, about who you are, that might think is important?
I just, like I said, I love people, and I love to be a shining light for everybody around me. And so anybody that doesn't know me should know that about me. If you ever need, someone to talk to, or if you ever just want to, pray with me or anything, I love meeting new people. So you can always come to me and, we can chat. That would be lovely. But I don't know. I'm just a regular person. I'm flawed, I'm broken, but I do my best to just take it day by day and let go and let God. So
awesome. If you're still with us in the podcast, we just want to thank you for making it this far. Thanks to everyone who showed up live on Facebook. Pam, Glenna, Heather, Melissa, like there's a whole bunch of you guys. Thanks for so much for supporting Sarah in this podcast. If you made it this far, please like and share and subscribe. All iTunes, all this stuff. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your testimony. I know like this stuff is like really sensitive and very hard sometimes. And so just really want to thank you for sharing. We always end the podcast with this question. Why do you think God is awesome?
Asking me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm asking you, baby.
Why do I think God is awesome? Gosh, because he's just created this whole beautiful, amazing earth for us to live in, and created so many brothers and sisters in Christ for us to connect with. I mean, who couldn't be awesome that's created beautiful, wonderful things? My favorite thing to do is watch the sunset, and that's one of the times I feel closest to God. So God is awesome for making the sunset.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys again. We really appreciate you joining us for this episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Sarah, we're out of here.